1. For as long as I can remember, my mom, a stereotypical Mexican mother, always had a special bond with me since I am her only son. She always spoiled me and treated me differently from that of my sisters. So when the day came in which she thought I was kidnapped, she experienced true terror for the first time. Keep in mind, this was in 2004 when I was barely 5 years old and my grandmother had just passed away, juggling funeral arrangements, taking care of 3 kids, and putting me through school. My mom was going through a rough year. So the day happened when my mom experienced the worst fear in her life. It was the end of the school day, and every day my mom would come pick me up and take me home. However, being a curious 5-year-old, this time I wanted to try something different, and wondered how it would be like to take the bus home for a change. Me being young, and stupid, I thought the bus would magically take me home and everything would be okay. Little did I know it would cause a shit show. My mom came to my school and wondered where the hell I was. She asked teachers, faculty, and even kids in my class where the hell I was. No one had an answer because no one had actually seen me get on the bus. This horrified my mom, shook her to the core as she wondered where her baby boy was. Her fear turned into anger as maternal instincts kicked in. She wondered how not a single person knew what happened to me. To make matters worse, some kid in my class told my mom, "I saw Ivan get into a car with a man." My mom's heart dropped and her stomach sank. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed her as she thought I was kidnapped. She had to sit there and take it, as there was absolutely nothing she could do. Needless to say, the school became hectic. Cops were called. The principal got involved. My teacher started crying for losing sight of me. And my mother had to experience the thought of losing her son over a supposed kidnapping. Eventually, the principal got a message from the bus driver over her walkie-talkie. "Hey, I have a kid here on the bus who doesn't know where he lives. I'm going back to the school to drop him off." Hearing this over the walkie-talkie, my mom had a glimpse of hope left in her. She prayed it was me on that bus. The bus pulled in and the driver opened the doors and let me out. I see a crowd of cops, faculty, and curious parents. Then I see my mom, of course, with her chest heaving and face full of tears. She was relieved to have found me safe, but also very mad at me for doing something so stupid. I made my mom's day a living hell. So nighttime arrives. And after having a long and terrible day, it's time for my mom to knock the hell out. She falls asleep instantly, but proceeds to have the most vivid dream of her life. In her dream, my mom is at work when a co-worker goes up to her and says, "Hey, Laura, there's someone on the phone asking for you." My mom picks up the phone and starts to hear mumbles at first. After listening closely, she could make out words and eventually recognize a voice. It was my grandmother.
"Mija, don't worry. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry, mija. It's beautiful up here."
"Mom? Where are you? I'll go pick you up. Where are you, Mom?"
"Don't worry, mija. Everything is fine. It's beautiful up here."
Click. My mom woke up crying after just having had communicated with her dead mother in a dream. To this day, my mom believes my grandmother had reached out to comfort her daughter one last time, especially after experiencing the most horrific day in her life in which she thought I was kidnapped. With the stress of the funeral and taking care of 3 kids, my grandmother just wanted to let my mom know that everything would be okay. I know it's just a dream, but for my mom to hear my grandmother's comforting voice one last time after the worst day of her life, it's got to be more than a coincidence. I like to believe there is somewhere we go after our time here on Earth, and I hope it's as beautiful as my grandmother says it is. 2. To preface this happened a little while back, and we haven't had any issues since, but it's kinda bothered me. We live in an apartment complex area that has been known to have some hauntings in the area. The area was built on a Chinese prisoner of war camp, where a lot of people died along with some old samurai battlegrounds. I have not had any paranormal experiences before this point. My wife has had some weird shit go on in her life before, and our friend has wanted to experience something, so we invited her over and decided to do some spooky stuff at 2 in the morning. It was my wife and our friends sitting on a couch doing their own thing, chanting, calling out, typical horror movie white people stuff, and I was sitting in a chair across from them watching. After a couple minutes sitting in my chair, I felt a weird presence, and I saw a flash of Japanese kabuki, the white mask with red markings, and a very loud female scream, think female horror movie off in the distance of the haunted house type. I shook it off, thinking my nerves were getting the better of me, late at night, lights out, trying to be spooky, and continued to watch my wife and buddy. Another couple of minutes go by, and I feel like someone slightly pushes on the back of my head. Then the image of the mask and same scream flash into my head. At this point I'm freaked out a little. 2 times could still be a coincidence, right? Then after another minute or so I feel like I'm blacking out. My vision narrows and I feel the same presence, much stronger, almost like hands in my head. The same mask and scream flash in my head. I decided enough is enough and turn on the lights and say I'm done. Both my wife and buddy turned to me and asked how long I had been standing there before I turned the lights on. I asked why, because I had just gotten up. They said they thought I had stood up about 10 minutes prior, and that there was a black shadow figure standing directly where I was sitting. We wrapped up for the night and didn't think about it for a couple days, until my wife started having sleep paralysis. She described a lady, long black hair with a mask that had red markings that came into our room, and just stared at her for a long time, then vanished. Mind you, I hadn't told her about the mask, or why I had said I was done with our spooky outing. Over the next couple weeks, she'd see her either through sleep paralysis or out of the corner of her eye. It really unnerved us. We spread salt, looked into banishing spirits in the house, a bunch of different Japanese rituals we could do. None of it really helped. It all stopped, though, after we started talking about having a kid and starting a family. All of a sudden, no more sleep paralysis. No more weird feelings in the house. And nothing since. We looked a little more into the area and found out that the children around the area have described a nice lady that they play with and protects them. Stops kids before they run into a street and get hit by a car. Keeps them away from the hornet nests and centipedes. Plays games and sings to them. We're not sure who she was, but it sounds like the same lady to us. Maybe. Anyone have any thoughts on the matter? If anyone has any questions about the other weird things that have happened over there that we've heard about, feel free to ask. 3. About 6 years ago, over the summer of my junior year, going into my senior year of high school, I experienced something that I can't quite shake off to this day. My friend's parents were going out of town for the weekend, so myself and 3 others, including Matt, planned a sleepover so we could all hang out, be as loud as we want, etc. We slept over at my friend Matt's house. His house was located on the east side of town, where that small wooded area was located. That night, we all mentioned how we should sleep on his trampoline since it was warm that night, and none of us had done it before. Matt was a little concerned with the idea because he had mentioned that homeless people, and sometimes deer, wander in and out of the little forest next to his house. There was no fence separating us from the woods, so anything could go in and out of the yard, into the forest, and vice versa. I told him we were going to be fine, and that there was nothing to worry about. Boy, did I wish I could take that statement back. We started setting up our spots on the tramp, getting cozy, and just hanging out, looking at our phones. About an hour into this, I started to hear twigs snapping and leaves crunching. Matt was the only one who wasn't on the tramp, but sitting on a small river donut on the deck next to the tramp. He was sitting on this due to an injury that happened to him a few weeks prior to these events. I was looking at Matt while all of this was happening, and he was looking into the woods. He didn't say anything other than a quiet, "I told you this was a bad idea." I kept listening for a few minutes, and then it stopped. My friends were all listening too, but they didn't seem concerned. It was really quiet after it stopped. None of us said a thing. We all looked back on our phones, and that's when I saw it. The second my eyes met my phone, I saw from my peripheral vision this 7 to 8 foot tall thing ran out of the woods, into the backyard, and darted to the side of the house. All we saw was a silhouette of whatever it was. It was almost as if it was ghostly. It was extremely slim and bipedal. Here's the kicker, though. We saw it run, but we didn't hear it run. It made zero sound when it was moving, but it made the motion of someone running. When we saw this, we all did the exact same thing, screamed and ran off the tramp. Matt was the first one inside, and I was surprised he was even able to walk, let alone run, because of his injury. We left some blankets and pillows outside because we were in such a hurry. We shut and locked the sliding door, all of the windows and doors we could find. We kept looking out some of the windows to see if we could see anything, but there was nothing. Because we were so startled, we stood up until sunrise to finally go to sleep. I think about what happened on almost a daily basis. Everyone I have told this to has a theory that it escaped from the mountains next to the forest. For a little backstory, I live in Magna, Utah. The mountains on the east side that separate us from Tooele are said to house some sort of secret military base where experimentation and other things are done on who knows who or what. I've had dreams of myself finding the base and going inside it. If any of you have played the game Half-Life, you can get an idea of what it looked like, according to my dream. 4. So to start, a little backstory. My husband and I lived in a big city in a teeny tiny house, around 500 square feet. We were planning our wedding and starting a family, so we couldn't stay there anymore. Well, I couldn't. He was okay with it. We had dreams of moving out into the country, and we found such an amazing deal on 320 acres that we had to check it out. We emailed the realtor, and she said the lady living there wasn't ready to show the house yet. She really didn't want to sell, so she wasn't sure when she could show it. We asked that we could come and see the land, and the house would be fine until we could build our dream home further away from the highway. So we go as excited as ever. We pull up and get out of the truck. All you could hear was birds and the wind. It was so peaceful and quiet in comparison to city life. We knew this was our home. Realtor arrived, and the owner wasn't home, so she showed us the house. It was 1,300 square feet, so it felt like a mansion to us. The lady who owned it was 80-some years old and lived on the property alone. Her children wanted her to move closer to them for fear something could happen to her. She'd always go out in the field on her quad, not trusty at all, or in her beat-up van. So inside her house there were pictures of saints everywhere. She was Haitian, and I got the voodoo vibe, but not at all in a negative concept. So we go explore the outbuildings. One of them has a chair, a ton of burnt-out candles and some knives, more voodoo vibes, again, not negative. It's a religion, and I'm not one to judge what people believe. We ended up meeting the lady, and she took us on her quad to see the land. It stalled a few times. She was really fun, upbeat. She also seemed to like my husband and myself. So we made an offer and got the house. Yay! We had a bunch of friends help us move. November 2016. I burnt sage in the house because that's something I do. I never got any negative vibes, but just to clear it out for our belongings. I had a friend with me and she said that she saw a shadow move. So she also went over the house with sage just to be safe. We do know someone died on the property cutting trees down, so I wanted to be on the safe side. Another friend got super creepy vibes that night. They stayed on the main level bedroom, and she said the entire night it felt like someone was watching her. On the main level in the original house, there's a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and an oversized pantry. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs. There was an addition on the main level. It had the dish pit, aka sink, and cupboards, but not enough room for a table, and the bathroom, and its own little cellar basement. The original basement looks like something out of a dungeon with giant boulders and unfinished. The pillars holding the beams up are trees rather than 4x4s. It's very rustic and I love it. But it can give off weird vibes. I'm no stranger to ghosts, as I grew up in a haunted house, but that's another long story. My husband has always been a skeptic. The beat-up, falling-apart barn always creeped me out. I never liked it. And I would just avoid it. Half of the roof was caving in. It looked like a scene from a horror movie. It even creeped out my husband. He felt like something was always going to jump out at him when he was fixing things in there. Anyway, on to the paranormal bits. So I can't remember really when this started, as so much has happened in the few years we lived here. But it started when I was walking into the living room and passed by the basement stairs. I saw a black dog, almost pitbull-shaped, sitting at the bottom of the stairs with red eyes. I did a double take, and it wasn't there. I went into the basement, thinking it was our big dog, Mastiff Rottweiler Shepherd Lab Cross, but he wasn't there, he was in the dish pit. So I tell my husband and shake it off. I felt uneasy about it, but didn't want to make a big deal of it. Next event, I have a miscarriage. Not sure how long after this, maybe a few months, so I'm in a pretty dark place. We also had a falling out with a close friend that ended up being pretty messy, and some huge negative family drama with an in-law. The in-law is verbally abusive, manipulative, etc. A few months later, my husband has to work a job overnight in another province. First night by myself in the house. It was creepy. I felt so uneasy the entire night. I was so thankful he was only gone the one night. I felt like I wasn't alone. My dogs are a little on edge. It was super windy and stormy out. It was a perfect scene for a horror movie. So I went to bed early and slept it away. Carry on again. I'm pregnant once more. Our baby boy was growing wonderfully. Our 2 old dogs, Japanese chins, had some crazy dental work done. They weren't happy campers, so they were up all night. My pregnant self was tired and cranky, so I took my Yorkie poo to the main level guest bed to sleep. She was pretty restless. She kept looking at a corner of the room, and then moving to different parts of the bed, trying to get comfortable. Always to sit up and look at that corner. This is a bedroom my friend had very negative vibes in, so my Yorkie poo started growling at that corner of the room. So we noped out of there pretty quick, and suffered a sleepless night with our recovering dogs. It was super dark, and you couldn't see anything in the room. Then we had a music festival on our property in June. It was fun, and related to this in the future. Lovely baby boy decided to be a breech baby and kick my nerves all the time to the point I couldn't walk. So I started maternity leave early at 36 weeks. Due end of July 2018. So I am home now all day. The house felt so different than just being home in evenings and weekends. It felt like a heaviness. I couldn't go in the basement if it was dark out, only in the daytime. I just got this feeling something bad would happen if I did. I constantly felt like I was being watched. If the small dogs were in our bedroom, the Yorkie poo would bark and growl at anyone coming up the stairs, which was a new behavior for her. And this is when I started getting feelings like I would be followed up the stairs. Baby boy is born, and he's a night owl, so I am up a lot in the night, which isn't normal for me. Our top floor is 3/4 story, so there's storage space where the walls are, because of that corner angle of the roof. And in baby boy's bedroom there's an opening with no door. I feed him in his room so not to disturb the husband, as he is still going to work. It feels like something is watching and waiting in there. I would avoid looking at it because I felt like if I did, I would see glowing eyes or something worse. Even just walking the hallway between bedrooms is very uncomfortable during these nighttime feedings. I ended up starting to see these shadows following me, which was creepy, and it defied all science. I always try to debunk things I saw so I wouldn't work myself up into a frenzy. These shadows were also so large. They'd be as tall as the ceiling, 10 feet, and were disproportionate looking. I would try to recreate the shadows with my steps, but it never worked. As for the feelings, I always tried to make myself believe it was in my head, just an overactive imagination. Sometimes knocking would come from the basement, especially when the internet wasn't working and our modem and router were in the basement. That would be awful because I had to work up a lot of nerve to go fix the internet, as it was my lifeline without cable. We moved the guest bed into the basement. I was going to sleep there one night so I could catch up, and my husband was going to feed the baby boy at night. So I settle up in the basement, get all comfy, cozy, and excited for a night's sleep. Turn off the lights, and there's this green light on the ceiling. It's fading in and out slightly, but in no regular pattern. So I'm thinking it's a reflection of the ducting or something. Turn on the lights, and it's solid wood where the green light was. There also isn't any green light to cause a reflection. I noped out of there and went to our traveler trailer on a cold fall night. We had another festival in September. Ended up talking to someone that was there in June. So they're asking me about the other big black dog, and I'm like, there's just the one. And they're dead serious. They saw this big pit bull-like dog in the field at both festivals. So this made me feel like I wasn't going crazy and reassured me that what I was experiencing was real. But then it made me realize I am not crazy and that this is happening, and it's pretty terrifying. When husband is at work, I'm very isolated. Our closest neighbor is a mile away. All our family lives an hour drive away. So I am a little freaked out with everything going on. I am talking to local friends and city friends. I get in touch with a medium. She got me to text her a photo of our house. She says the land is bad, the house is bad, and the dog is possibly a demon. She offered to come help me salt the house for gas money. She never charged me anything. She never told me why the land is bad, and to this day I am still very curious. So I ended up getting a local church group to come pray through the house. It really didn't do anything, but they told me some crazy stories of other houses they had blessed. So the area was pretty haunted. I am super unhappy still because my husband is about to leave for 8 weeks, and I don't want my son growing up in a haunted house like I did. I am also so uncomfortable in the home and about to be alone with our little guy. Someone gets me in touch with a shaman. He comes and does his thing. Really cool to watch. So he finishes up and tells me what he found. Lots of shadow people in that hideaway space upstairs, at the top of the stairs and bottom. Basically everywhere where I felt like I was being watched and such. Apparently shadow people feed on negative thoughts. Also, I never explained specifics to him, so it was neat that his findings matched my experiences. The shadow people weren't feeding off me, but rather my husband. But I am super sensitive, so I was getting all the bad vibes. The dog was, as he said, 80% gone, and if it wasn't, he would come back. He said the barn was awful and we should just burn it. He set up a crystal grid around the property to protect us in the future from negative spirits. We talked about some of my past experiences, I have so many, and the previous owner. I feel as though her voodoo was protecting her from what we were experiencing. Shaman was lovely. He gave me some blue corn for storing some of my crystals, and gave me some suggestions to help keep my sensitivities at bay. Shaman leaves, husband comes home, says the house feels lighter and he couldn't believe it. Fast forward a few more months. I am watching Netflix with the baby sleeping in my arms. Husband comes and says, I saw something. So that was a little vague, so I pry a bit. He thought one of our little Japanese chins went into the bathroom. It was a white and small thing that went there. Our chins are black and white. So he follows and the bathroom door was closed. He is baffled, being the skeptic he is, so I text Shaman up. He says he'll do his thing and get back to me. When he does, he says it was one of our guardians. Sometimes I feel things move in the house, but it's nothing like what we experienced. No more shadows, no phantom dogs. I can go into the basement at night now. I don't like going down there at night because it's still a little creepy. My husband isn't so skeptical anymore, but it was a wild ride from moving in to over 2 years later. At least for now, all is calm in the home. 5. Do you have ghosts in your home? No? You don't believe they are real, really? I wish I could live in your bubble. However, I live in an extremely active area. So much so that I haven't met a neighbor that hasn't had any of their own experiences with the paranormal on a regular basis. For weeks now, we have been seeing figures come to the front door of my parents' house and just disappear. The front door has a glass window in it with a frosted bouquet of flowers. The figures quite literally walk up to the door and step a little to the side, as you would to open the door, and just vanish. The weekend before last, I was sitting on the couch and could see movement in the big picture window next to the door. I was trying to decide if it was a reflection when Mom, who was sitting in the rocker directly across from the window, asked if I had seen the apparition at the door. The reflection I had been looking at, with the motion in it, was a reflection of the dining room window that was reflecting the front door. A week ago today, I was at home alone with our 2 dogs. The girl's bedroom door, which is maybe 4 feet from my desk, was open, but gated so the dogs couldn't get in. I heard what I can only describe as someone changing positions on the lower bunk bed in the girls' room. Okay, shrugged it off, moved on. A few minutes go by and the sounds repeated, but for a longer duration. Got up from my desk and looked. Of course there was nothing there. Creep factor amping up. I could see shadow play and heard movement in their room. Went and got the cedar and cleansed it. Again, nothing further of note since. I took my mother to the eye surgical center at a distance of about 50 miles in a small city. She lives in the country, and I live nearby in a rapidly expanding college town. We took her van as she was having a cornea replacement and would need to lay flat after the surgery. We had taken the middle bench seat out of the van to create a space. All went well with the surgery, and we laid her down in the center of the van. Mind you, she is lying flat to keep the bubble in her eye pressed up against the cornea, so it will remain in place until healed enough to stay put on its own. Apparently the bubble is slowly absorbed into the eye. I could not see her in the rearview mirror like I could had she been sitting up in the seat. While Mom was in surgery, Dad, who is 85 years old, took a header and broke his face open and bruised his arm really bad. My half-sister took him to the local emergency room to make sure nothing but skin was busted, and had called my cell phone. Unfortunately, I didn't get the call, but saw the missed call when we got in the car. Knowing my sister and I don't talk to each other unless it is something important, involving one of our siblings or Dad, I called her immediately and learned of Dad's fall. This meant I had no idea where the babysitters, my uncle and his girlfriend, were, and my husband was sitting at home waiting on kids to get out of school. I called my husband, had him pick up the kids, and find my mother's brother and girlfriend. On the way home, I had the fluttery feeling you get when a spirit is nearby. We weren't even out of the city yet. Odd. I have never had a paranormal experience in this city. I looked around the outside of the van on all sides, then looked in the rearview mirror. I almost cracked up the van. There, sitting in the rear seat, was a dishwater blonde, very thin, 16-ish young girl, with shoulder-length wavy hair and a warm brown V-neck t-shirt. Mind you, it is like 5 degrees, minus 25°C. I bring the van to a stop, turn fully around and look at the seat. No one was there, and the feeling was gone too. Mom asked if everything was okay. I asked her if she had seen anyone in the back seat. She said that she hadn't. I asked her if she was okay and comfortable. After assurances that she was fine, we went on home. I didn't see our paranormal hitchhiker after that. I told Mom after tucking her into the couch what I had seen in the van. That was a new one on me. Never had a spirit in the car before. Turns out my uncle and his girlfriend had stayed at the house waiting for everyone to return. He says that about the time I saw the girl in the van, he heard his mother, who had been dead for years, say in his ear that everything was okay and not to worry. Talking and singing have been heard in the house for several years now, and it's getting louder. You can almost make out the words, and the melodies are quite hymn-like. After Dad and my sister returned from the emergency room the day of my mom's surgery, you could hear the singing throughout the house. However, this time it was definitely a soft lullaby, over and over, until nearly dinner time. My oldest daughter, who skipped the 8th grade and is now a sophomore, spent the first 2 nights after surgery with her grandparents. The first night, she was helping my dad climb the stairs to his room. He fell going up the stairs into the upstairs hallway. No, he didn't hurt himself again. That we can tell. The carpet in the upstairs hallway was a lot softer than the concrete in the driveway. My uncle and his girlfriend had gone to bed right after supper, and were sound asleep. My uncle reported that he had not heard Dad fall, but heard a man's voice tell him to get up and help pick up Dad. Dad and my uncle were the only 2 men in the house, and no one else heard it. My daughter said that she felt that fluttery feeling all night, but kept her eyes closed tight and never heard anything she couldn't explain. I live in a trailer park on the north side of town. Before it had been a trailer park, it was a potato field. Before that, it had been a grist mill, like 100 years ago. Before that, it was wild and filled with sagebrush. Not even 125 years ago. Every now and then, my husband and I have seen a shadow figure of a large bear lumber through the trees at the back of our lot, always seen running north to south. The kids and our neighbors have never seen it. The second day after surgery, my husband's dachshund Mix saw the bear and took off after it, barking every step of the way. When it disappeared, he looked back at me with a quizzical look on his face, as if to ask, where had it gone? This has only been since the 2nd of February. Today is the 11th of February. Believe it or not, other than the girl in the van, this was all normal everyday occurrences that I have started writing down for our dear Hellfreezer. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 127. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Have the dogs stopped? Of course they've stopped. I'm done recording stories, why wouldn't they have stopped? Okay, well, I'm going to try once again this weekend to try and get this bedroom of mine decorated. I'm not feeling super duper 100% better, but I'm feeling a little bit better. I think the antibiotics might be helping. So we shall see. I certainly don't feel as tired as I have been, so that's a good thing. So hopefully I'll have the energy to get the wallpaper slapped up. By which I mean take my time very carefully to properly measure everything out. Good thing is, when you're stripping walls, I take it everybody does this, but you get to the point, you usually find the section of the wall where you've actually written down the measurements you need. So you don't even have to bother measuring anything out. Not a major pattern in the wallpaper either. This is very boring, isn't it? Stop talking about wallpaper, Hellfreezer. Okay, now the paint, though. Alright, well, I won't tell you about the paint. Never mind the paint. I'm not actually painting. The thing is, the fun part for me, not the actual decorating, I hate decorating. Wallpapering less so than painting, though. I don't mind that so much. But the fun part for me was once it's done, I can then start finding like art and things to go on the walls. I'm considering shelving at some point. I also did find, I don't know if I'll do it, but I was browsing the internet the other day. For some reason I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find old black and white pictures of my town from like way back in the day. And I found a few. What actually I found a very pleasant surprise was I found one of my street, the street I live on, taken from like the top of the hill down. And you can actually see the houses being constructed. I can't actually quite see my house. You can just see the first one on the other side of the road. And I was thinking, it's not immensely big, but if I can enlarge it a little bit without losing too much quality, I might actually print it out on like decent quality paper, like photo paper, and frame it. I thought that might actually make a nice image to go, not in my bedroom, I was thinking maybe in the living room for that. Because I decorated the living room years ago, and I've actually still to put anything on the walls. I took all the stuff down. I was like, well, I don't want to put them back up because I don't like them, because they weren't ones that I picked. Those are ones that my parents had picked out, most likely my mother, when they were alive. And so when I decorated, my choice for the first time was, well, I'll get my own things to go on the walls. And that was about 3 years ago. So when I'm getting stuff for the bedroom, I'll get stuff for the living room as well. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.